welcome to Digital Transformation Survivors. This is the podcast that talks to industry professionals and leaders about their challenges in learning how to manage complex web estates and digital transformations. I'm your host, Julian Tedstone, Managing Director for Coherence. And that's what we do. We specialize in figuring out how to help businesses with their web estates. Today, I am here talking to our very celebrated and very valuable guest, Allison Bacher. Allison is a transformation specialist and founder at Quantum of Value, where she brings a unique blend of agile expertise, sales experience to help organizations navigate really complex transformation processes. And that's everything from technology transformation to business transformation, a blend of those elements all working together. So she's got experience working with heavily regulated organizations where it can sometimes be a challenge to and an opportunity to affect organizational change. And she's got a series of, I think, really practical approaches to help organizations overcome the barriers to change. And I think, given that so many transformation programs are challenged by the change processes that are required, I think this is going to be a really, really interesting conversation. Her background includes roles at Gartner, and she specializes helping teams understand the business value of transformation. So welcome, Allison. Really, really happy to have you on the podcast this morning. How are you doing?
I'm great today. Thank you, Julian. And thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Not at all. Not at all. We're very privileged to have you on the cast this morning. So let's start talking about yourself, your background. You want to hear about Quantum of Value, how that came into being. Your own journey in coming to this to this point. It'd be really great to get that.
Okay. Well, I'm the co-founder of Quantum of Value, and we're a boutique consultancy that specialises in agile transformation and digital transformation. And there are two parts to my role. So the first part is I'm a very hands-on consultant, working with organisations to help them implement real change. And we'll, I guess, talk a little bit later on about what real change is, but I'm talking about tangible change that impacts business results, not just fluffing around the edges. So that takes up a huge amount of my time. I'm also a stakeholder in our SaaS product, which is Performalize, an AI-powered agile enablement platform. And people say, what's an agile enablement platform? Really good question, because I believe we're the first to be out there. It's essentially having an AI-powered 24/7 agile coach. Okay, so we found that as Quantum of Value, the way we approach transformation was very challenging to scale because you need the right blend of consultancy and you need to be readily available to people. So we basically productized it, and we've created a platform that guides teams through their agile workflows. It uses behavioral analytics to identify things like blockers before they become blockers, habits. So we see where they're strengthening good habits, where bad habits are creeping in, and it helps us to, here we are, manage stakeholders, okay, and get that feedback, really engage your stakeholders and get that feedback from them. We can even see who's engaging with us and who isn't, and how that's impacting our delivery. So some really cool stuff in there.
And just for so a bit of context, what are the types of organisations that you're helping to change? Because I think you've got that blend of the kind of face-to-face human-based agile coaching, and then
Yeah.
you have a suite of enablement technologies. What type of client are you aiming to help, and what are the typical types of challenge that they have?
If you ask about the typical organization, it's those that are really complex.
Mm.
It's those that have a really complex situation. So our mutual acquaintance, Simon Sanet at National Grid, consolidating all of
Yes.
those websites, okay? Real complexity. It's never just doing some front end work, it's everything that encompasses business processes, the
Yeah.
works. So that's one side of the scale. The other side of the scale is we work with organizations who are in scale up mode. So we do quite a lot of
Mm.
work there because they need to scale. They need to scale so that they can scale. They don't need to just run faster. And we get some of those that ask us effectively, how do we write code faster? Because they want to get their product out there faster. And the answer is never about writing code faster, right? The answer is always about how do
Hmm.
we ideate better? How do we improve our go-to-market? It's all of those things. So our typical client is quite a broad range. For me personally, I love complexity and I happen to love regulated industries. So
Okay.
it's,
All right. So that's an interesting one there. Right there, is it regulated industry? So
yeah,
what types of complexity do you see in those organizations, and what kind of challenges do they present?
very different to our smaller organizations for
Yes.
various reasons, right? And not least of all, because governance, okay, the larger the organization, typically the more complex the governance.
Hmm.
And we can
Yeah.
take two approaches to this. We can kind of say, ah, governance is bad, okay, and we can ignore it and we can leave it till the very end, and then it's going to bite us. It's going to be a blocker. We've got to remember that governance is there for a reason. There's a purpose to all of this. And that purpose is we need to protect the organization. What
Mm.
often we find is it can be a little bit Wizard of Oz, you know, you go behind the curtain and it's not quite what it seems. Or that process
Yeah.
might have been fit for purpose 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, because things move very quickly,
Mm.
might not be
Yeah.
fit for purpose today. So rather than avoid it, I have a particular passion for going to meet those people very early stage and get them on board, go talk to them, understand what the governance is, why it's there, explain what we're trying to achieve, and then get to some joint way of approaching it instead of finding
Mm.
that we have friction. It doesn't need to be that way. Um,
And just by kind of boiling it down, so what governance in this context could be what? It could be like data governance, for example. It could be
yes,
meeting regulatory
yes,
requirements within a
yes,
regulated industry. For example, in the
yes,
pharmaceutical industry, you have
yep,
certain codes of conduct that you had to adhere to. It could be
yeah,
internal security
yeah.
mandates.
That's a
It
typical
could be
one.
any of those
Hmm.
things. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah,
InfoSec, it's often seen as, you know, the big bad department that want to stop you. They just want to stop you
yeah,
doing things.
yes.
Of course they don't. They just need to protect the business. And so if we go and we
So
have that mutual understanding, we're good. We're fine. We go together. Yeah. And they get
so
involved
you
early.
go.
Sorry.
You bring them in. You bring them in. So you go and talk to you go. So if you're on the marketing side of things, or on the communication side of things, or if you're trying to bring forward a digital innovation,
Yeah,
this is almost kind of crossing the floor, going to
absolutely.
and forgive me for saying this, compliance friends, but crossing the floor to the Department of No, and
Absolutely.
helping to bring them into the
Absolutely.
process. Interesting.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I find they very rarely know. They are not like this because. And if we
Yeah.
don't understand the because, we can't deal with it. And if they don't understand our because, okay. So, for
Yeah.
example, we want to release every sprint every 2 weeks. And that can be seen as a big, you know, no, talk to the hand. Well,
Yeah.
if they understand that we want to release to get feedback, to release value, to get feedback, so that we can adapt earlier rather than later,
Hmm.
they'll come with us, they'll
Yeah.
work with us as long as we can make sure we've addressed this, this, and this. We
Yeah.
go forward
Yeah.
together, all is good.
And I guess I guess the context for our audience, we started this conversation talking about complex web estates,
Mm.
and that's where an organization typically has got multiple different types of audience, and they could
Right.
be audiences are in different like geographical locations, or they could be different product sets.
Hmm.
or they could be on different stages of a journey, or maybe an
Yeah.
organization has grown through mergers and acquisitions and they've got a lot of legacy websites and systems. And I guess the dream is that you can create a platform, and by I don't mean technology platform
Hmm.
only. I mean a kind of a way of doing things that includes
Yes.
technology and people and processes that kind of, I guess, kind of brings all of the governance and the compliance together in one place, so that you can be really, really kind of confident that it's being executed correctly, and there's
Yes.
uniform kind of compliance, but at the same time, kind of releasing the creativity of the innovators and the communicators, so that they can work to their audience's needs. And that's the kind of the
Yeah.
dream, isn't it? Having those two
That's the
things
dream. Yes.
working frictionlessly together. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So getting there. I mean, you've spoken about that digital transformation process then really starting with the business. And we've already had an insight there because you're talking to all of these different stakeholders. So the transformation process starts with the business, not the
Yeah.
technology. So talk
Correct.
us through that insight. That's really good. Yeah,
Correct. For me, it always starts with business because, exactly to your point,
yeah,
we might have a lot of legacy systems, we might have a whole mixed bag in our estate. But ultimately, we're not
mm,
here to play with tech. We're here to service the business. We're here to service our
yeah,
customers. And,
mm,
digital transformation is not just an IT initiative.
yeah,
It's when it's
yeah,
an IT initiative that it fails because we're playing with tech, we're not solving a real business need. So there are three things that I've
mm,
found are really crucial to success in digital transformation. And the first one is you start with the business. It's
yeah,
all about engaging your stakeholders. It's all about understanding what do they need? What's the true business need before we even touch
mm,
technology? Okay.
mm.
And by the way, a lot of waste in transformation comes because we don't get this step right. We don't
Yes,
get our
yeah,
ideation right at the
yeah,
outset. We
yeah,
scramble as we go along. So, my
yeah.
experience, 50-60% of waste in these transformations comes because the business aren't fully engaged. And therefore, people aren't empowered to make these decisions about the estates. Make sense?
And it absolutely makes sense. And it doesn't surprise me that there's such a high proportion of wastage that comes through comes through that process if it's not handled correctly. But I guess the types of organisations that we're talking about, they could be multi-departmental, they
Hmm.
could be multi-regional, they
Correct.
could be completely split into different P&Ls.
Yeah.
They're really
Yes. All of the above. Yeah.
they're,
Yeah.
yeah, all of the
Yeah.
above. Federated businesses
Yeah.
that are, maybe they've got different kind of regulatory needs in different markets, all of this kind of stuff. It feels like a many-headed hydra.
Hmm.
So there you are. I'm putting myself in the shoes of a transformation lead,
Hmm.
and my task is to create a next generation, whatever it is, customer service platform
Hmm.
that is fulfilling the needs of multiple different brands within an organization. Like I, I I get it that I need to engage the business, but how do I do it? Where do I start?
It's a really good point, actually, because where do I start? It's usually the first question I ask, like, where do we start? Where do we start? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said there were three things that are really key. And the first one is start with the business. The second one is start small.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
Start small.
Yeah,
Start somewhere.
yeah.
Anywhere. Ideally,
Okay.
ideally, the place that has the biggest business pain, but start small. And
Mm,
actually establish your ways of working, gain some confidence, gain confidence of your
yeah,
stakeholders, practice your craft, technically practice your
yeah.
craft. Okay, add all that in,
Mm,
and then you grow out from there. And I'm really keen on
yeah.
start small because the way to make change stick is to make lots of small changes that humans can absorb, people can absorb. The organization is
Mm.
a bunch of people, right? And it's people and processes,
Yes,
but it's
yes.
primarily a bunch of people, okay? And the third element is it's all about people. And if we go too big and too fast, we overwhelm people. They don't embrace it. If we go too broad, they can't embrace it. It's too much change. It's overwhelming. It won't stick. So we've got to
Mm,
start with our business. We've got to start somewhere with our business. And it might be in a web estate, we start typically, with our burning platform. Where do we really need to do this? Where do we get the
mm,
best bang for our buck? And then we build out from there.
mm,
But
mm,
building out from there is then in increments and it's somewhat easier. Not easy, but somewhat easier because we've already got some foothold. We've already established that this works. So we've calmed the people down.
So that's a really kind of pragmatic approach. It's about leading by showing.
Yeah.
It's about establishing a really strong way of working, and then demonstrating that that works, and then incrementally building on that. And I can see how that can really establish confidence within an organization. But do you feel that sometimes there's a change mandate, and where the change mandate comes from is really important, because if there is a change mandate that is coming from an executive, for example,
Mhm.
or it's being driven by some really strong business imperatives, and we just talked about a burning platform there.
Yeah.
In those situations, the need and the expectation might be, we need to change this. We need to change this fundamentally, and we need to change it now. And it's got to be big, and we've got to get it done. And that's the kind of imperative that can come along. How do you balance that kind of imperative with the start small, do something, keep going way of doing things, which is, I guess the perception is that that's a more of a kind of a cultural change that becomes embedded,
Yes.
but may take a little
Exactly.
bit of time to gain traction. How do you balance those
Exactly.
competing expectations?
It's not easy. One of the first
Yeah,
things I would say is a transformation that's going to stick is anything from 18
mm,
months to 2, 3 years, the duration of the
yeah,
change. And I think most organizations don't understand that. They think someone comes in, they
mm,
do this change program for a year
mm,
with all their PowerPoints and, lots of meetings and lots of big show and tells and funky big ticket
yeah,
consulting stuff. And they're the ones that actually fail because the minute you walk away, if you haven't won those hearts and minds, if you haven't got those new habits formed, it will fall away. A high proportion
yeah.
of those fall away. Okay. So we've got lots of proof, lots of case studies. Big bang does not work for change. It's a big
Big bang
myth that
does
the
not.
big
You
four
heard it.
sell. Okay. Big bang does
You
not
heard
work.
it here, folks.
Yeah.
You heard it. Let's just call
Does
that
not
out. Big
work.
bang does not work.
It does
You
not work.
you can hear digital transformation leads the length and breadth of the country cheering right now, no doubt, with with that. So
I'm on my
big bang
soapbox.
does
Doesn't
yeah,
work. And the second thing is what often happens is that this idea, this spark, this mandate often comes from the top of the organization. So people follow it like a chain of command. Okay. And then those people say, go forth and change, off you go. Right.
yeah,
Another
yeah,
sure final say failure. I promise you it will fail. Why? Because it's not something that you do to an organization. You have to lead it. And by lead it, you have to make people want it. And if they want it, they have to see it's going to be better than before. You don't convince people it's better
so
than before with PowerPoint, right? You convince people
so
it's better than before by showing them.
yeah,
Yeah?
yes, and by demonstrating, but it's almost like you're creating your first step is to create a counterculture
Yes.
within that dominant culture,
Yes.
and that's a really interesting place to start. You're running
Yeah.
a kind of a mini insurgency within an organization.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. But
And
if you fail on that, Julian, give up. Most
mm,
organizations,
mm,
honestly, senior leadership don't get involved in that. and they
Hmm.
defer
Yeah.
it to middle management. And middle management
Yeah.
have the will to do it. Okay, without a shadow of
Yeah.
a doubt, there are some fantastic people out there
Yeah.
who have the will and, frankly, the
Yeah.
intellectual capability and the
Yeah.
know-how to do it. What they don't have is the
Mm.
power to do it.
Mm.
Okay. And
Mm.
they're not truly empowered to make those changes. If they're not empowered to make those changes, they'll tinker around the edges, they'll get frustrated, it will fall away. So, if leaders are
Yeah.
serious about transformation, they have to roll up their sleeves and get involved. If they're not going to roll up their sleeves and get involved, they're playing with it. Go home.
So, are you? Is part of your process then to start with the buy-in of the organisation, and how do you if you're doing that, you're almost kind of auditing the 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 readiness for change
Ideally, yes.
within an organisation. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. How
Well,
do you work out? How do you know if a business is ready to embrace a change? What are the signs?
it's a great question because mostly they're not. Okay, mostly they're
Right.
not.
Right.
So again,
Yeah.
mostly it's kind of middle management who are ready.
Mm.
Sometimes it's the troops who are ready. It's the
Mm.
readiness, the appetite for change at senior leadership is often on paper. Make it so. That's why they love the big four so much. They just bring in armies of people and
Mm.
say they're doing it. Yeah, make it so.
Yeah.
Um, but that is a sign for actually to us, that's a sign that they're not necessarily ready
Yeah.
because they're not
Yeah.
ready to roll up their sleeves and dive in
Yeah.
themselves. So, one of the first
Mm.
tells, one of the first things to really test their appetite is I do a half day workshop with them, which is couched as, here's an executive overview of what transformation means. And you can judge how they're responding to that. And some of them will be really, yeah, let me at it. This totally makes
Yeah.
sense. And then others will be saying, well, that won't work here because, and we'll have to change that. And no, we can't do that. And that's when
Yeah.
you have to work with them before
Hmm.
you go anywhere else. Or
Okay.
you have
Okay.
to accept that they will be a blocker. And nobody wants to hear that their senior leadership is going to block them, right? But the harsh reality is
Yeah.
that's what happens.
And I think we often see that we often see a like a web team or a center of excellence that have got like a really good handle on what their platform needs to be achieving. They're often quite well connected with their, I guess, their internal customers, whether it's the
Yes.
sales department or the marketing department, or whether, they're often really well connected and are providing the platform as a great service to that organization. But at the same time, they're trying to reflect upwards what their remit is, or what they believe it should be, what they're being asked to do, and that's where it's hitting it's hitting a kind of I guess a mismatch or a misalignment with things that are coming from the executive about what their expectations are, those kind of strategic objectives, or it could be commercial constraints, those
Hmm.
types of things,
Yes.
and I guess that's the bit where you're operating. You're operated to help those centers of excellence
Yes.
navigate those types of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my experience, I've been so fortunate over the years to have trained with honestly, some phenomenal people. And I've learned a huge amount, not only about transformation, but around regulation, about deadlines, about the what and the
Yeah,
why of these things. So I have perhaps a different perspective. And that means that I can
yeah.
explain these things from the boardroom right the way through to the backlog.
We were just chatting there, and you just used a phrase from the boardroom to the backlog,
Yes.
which absolutely love. So you're kind of you're helping centers of excellence. You're helping transformation leads to navigate that space. So at the backlog, you've got the minutiae, you've got the
Yeah.
detail. the transactional stuff that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you've got the expectation of the boardroom, and you're there kind of operating in the middle. And I think that area is really, really interesting. What are the decision making behaviors that you observe in that area, and how do you help people to navigate them?
Decision making behaviors are super interesting because some people are really clear
Mm.
about what they want to achieve and why they want to achieve it. And then I'm exaggerating
Yeah.
for effect, but you'll get other people who'll say, well, make it more modern.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yes.
Make it more modern, you know?
Yeah.
Make it
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, what does that mean? So the best advice I can give to anybody with these situations between boardroom and backlog, okay, is work with
Yeah.
objectives and key results. Look at your board's objectives and
Yeah.
then break those down and look at your key
Mm.
results so that you are clear with them about what you're delivering and why you're delivering. And you're
Mm.
automatically aligned to the business objectives. Quite often, we find that we need to do a bit of helping out here to help people understand what make it modern means. What does modern mean?
Yeah.
Um, provide a
Yeah.
better user experience. What does that mean? How are we going to
Yeah.
measure that? How is
Yeah.
that translating into our business results? Is it more sales? Is it better net promoter? Is it less people coming through call centers, whatever, but have those key results that we're really working to, then we're aligned and then we start speaking the same language.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we're on that
So
journey together.
So that's a really I think it's a human centered approach, isn't it?
Mm,
We spoke about that before. That it's a
yeah,
human centered approach, um, and I guess the technology then comes after, but
yeah.
you're always starting from a position where you've got some kind of is it consensus that you're asking for? Is it consensus over what the direction should be? It, how do you know? Maybe that's a better question. How do you know when an organization has got a executable objective?
That's a great
How do you get to
question
that
because
point? And
it's
when do
not
you
necessarily consensus, right? And consensus is
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
those words that makes me shudder. We can get
Okay.
consensus, but it can be really
Mm.
low level and everyone will just agree to it.
Yes.
And then
Yes. Yeah.
right, then it's pointless. So we have to
Yeah.
start right at the top with our business goals. Go right
Mm.
up to our corporate strategy. How are we going to deliver that? Break it down into those objectives together. So again, not ivory tower cascading these things down that we then scurry away and deliver. We joint workshop
Yeah.
this. We have a meeting of minds.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a meeting of minds. We're equals because we're actually
Yeah.
all here to do the same thing. Some people call it
Yeah.
partnering. That also makes me shudder because that sounds like we're not partners. Of course we are. We're not some lesser
Yeah.
mortals that do the
Yeah.
digital
Yeah.
stuff, right? And
Yeah.
these days, if
Yeah.
you're not good at digital, you're dead in the water. So, we've got to get the organization in the place where they're clear with us about what we're delivering and they are clear about what we're
Mm.
delivering. It's very human centered. Um, it's probably more challenging than the tech element because
Yes.
these days we're
Yeah.
pretty good at tech. We've got some fantastic tech,
Yeah.
right? It's this
Yeah.
stuff, this people stuff that is challenging. And the other thing is, quite often executives are afraid to engage with this stuff.
Hmm. Afraid. That's a
Yeah,
strong
they're
word. Why?
afraid.
Why?
Afraid.
Yeah.
Okay. We get this
Okay.
veneer. We get a veneer of, yeah, of course I understand.
Yeah.
Because they think they have to understand. Why do they have to understand? I love driving my car. I drive thousands of miles every year. I haven't got a clue how it
Yeah.
works. I don't have to.
Yeah. Mm.
I have, a lot of respect for the people who build and maintain my car. I don't know how it works. So I'm okay saying that. They have to be okay saying that.
So that's almost like creating an environment where people are feel safe,
Mm,
I guess, to you know, talk about areas where maybe they're not fully confident, and
Yeah,
we're talking about very highly performing
yeah,
individuals.
exactly.
Uh, yes, yeah, and then helping them to overcome that, so that you can engage with what the real questions are, and I guess those real questions come about. How do we deliver value to users? How do
Hmm.
we how do we solve these business challenges, or whatever
Yeah.
those may be? Yeah,
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 yeah. You talking about
and
safety. A lot of people talk about their teams having psychological safety. It's all over. You look on LinkedIn, people are going on and on. Teams need psychological safety. Absolutely, they do.
yeah.
But you know what? So do executives, because they're often expected to
Yes,
know things. Why are they expected to know?
yeah, yeah,
We don't know the ins and
yeah.
outs of how the finance department works. We're not expected to know, but we think they should
Mm.
know. Bizarre.
Very, very interesting. And you talk, part of your methodology is then to, I guess, I don't know if identify is the right word, but to find and work with change agents.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really interesting phrase. What is a change agent, and how do you, I guess, nurture and support that function?
I'll give you my version of what is a change agent. And the change
Okay.
agent is
Yeah.
somebody who is brave, who is bold, who is quite happy to go on a crusade for this.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you go out there and you're talking to people, perhaps crusade's the wrong word because that implies violence, and I don't believe it. But winning hearts and minds, that's a better way of putting it, okay?
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, go have those conversations, not get too frustrated when they don't land, try a different
Yeah.
angle.
Yeah.
You have to have strong people skills to do that,
Mm.
and quite a high degree of resilience, because you're going to get potentially a lot of no's, a lot of pushback. So we need to
Yeah.
find
That's a real
those
journey,
people.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, we need to find those people because it's not everybody.
And that they become the keystones to that center of excellence approach.
Yes.
And I use that phrase because it's a phrase that has come up quite a lot in the podcasts that we've been having,
Hmm.
in that in order to create a really effective, um, I guess, user-centered web estate, you need quite a complex set of skill sets working together.
Yeah.
They need to develop a very close way of working, almost like a muscle memory. It's been
Yes.
described as, and that kind of that suggests a center of excellence model
Hmm.
where you've got a space where these different disciplines can work together, but towards one kind of common aim. And I guess that change agent, that's the kind of the leadership potential that
Yes.
you're looking for to build that structure around.
Yeah.
Mm,
Absolutely. It's that person that is very focused. They're very focused on the business goals, the
mm.
business outcomes, and they have insight into the other disciplines. They don't necessarily need to be SMEs because they've got their leads in those other disciplines, but
Yeah,
they need to understand how to channel it. And they need actually to be quite charismatic so that people believe in them and want to go with them.
yeah, yeah. Interesting, interesting. Um, so we've talked about bringing that kind of that human centered element into it, and we've talked about I guess, some of the barriers that organisations face in affecting digital transformation. Let's talk a little bit about the kind of the wider digital transformation industry. So this is
Okay.
not just the people that are working within organisations, but there's a huge kind of like vendor and supplier professional services network
Yeah.
out there. We're all kind of loosely working in digital. What do we as an industry do well? What could we be doing better? And a bit of context behind that. It still feels like it's like affecting a fundamental change in, for example, how you manage 20 or 25 or 30 websites, and to do that elegantly, to do that efficiently, to do that in a way that you can continue to innovate. That still feels like a real headache that many organizations struggle with. How can we
Absolutely.
adopt better behaviors? How can we do better?
Good question. So I'm going to put my sales hat on for a minute. I think what the industry
Yes.
does is sell the dream really well.
Yeah.
Sell the dream brilliantly. Okay. I think what the industry does as a whole is then struggles to deliver on that dream. And I don't believe it's because of technology. I believe it comes down to two things. And the first thing is they're not brave enough with their customers.
Mm.
So once they have sold that dream, then they go into where the supplier will do what you want mode.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And actually, a good supplier is the expert, and a good supplier will genuinely help that customer to achieve the dream. But they have to be bold. They have to, they're there because they're the experts. They have to show their expertise and not fall into,
Mm.
yeah, 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 okay mode, which can happen very easily. And I understand that because there are commercial pressures. There are commercial
Mm.
pressures like deadlines. There are real commercial pressures around billing. I've been there, right? So I get it. I get it. Um, I've carried a bag for many years in various roles. I get it. But the truth of the matter is, if you don't deliver the dream, if you fail, your customer fails. You need to have that conversation with them early days and say, there might be some situations that will be uncomfortable, but you know what? Here's how we're going to deal with them. And we're going to deal with them this way because we've seen this before. 50 times, whatever. But give them the confidence that you know this, you've got this, and this is how we get over it. Don't fall into we're just the supplier, we'll do what you want. That's one industry failing. I think the second, if I may, is that a lot of organizations sell the dream and then they just put bodies out there. And from the
Yeah.
buyer, okay, I've worked with your people, I know that's not the case, but from the buyer's perspective, there's genuinely from the buyer's perspective, they don't always know, do they, the difference between an average person that's got a ton of Scrum certifications, for instance, versus a person that really
Yeah.
has the hands-on practical application and can do this stuff. So I
Mm.
think that's where the industry gets it wrong because then it fails and digital transformation has failed. The
Mm.
project has failed. Didn't have to be that way.
Oh, interesting, interesting, and I guess from that perspective, uh, the the industry is kind of it wants to do really well,
Hmm.
and it wants to do the best thing. I generally believe everybody wants to do the
I
best
agree.
thing, but but the kind of the I guess the pressures get in the way, don't they? And um, yeah, and I guess over the course of a big and complex website migration, for example, over many domains, it's possible to get into the weeds of that, isn't there? So there's a lot of detail
There is.
that is sometimes not always like massively engaging detail
Yeah.
about what you have to do. Mapping domain strategies and making sure that content is being migrated in the correct way. It's got to be done really, 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 really well. But it's perhaps not the thing that gets us all up in the morning
Yeah.
with the greatest excitement. So, how do you keep people motivated over that kind of process so that they can still switch from that kind of like executing way of doing things
Mhm.
and then lift their gaze up from time to time or when required to be more innovative, to taking a broader set of inputs and then think about what the next step might be. How do you balance those types of pressures?
Very tricky. It's very tricky. So I think from an industry perspective first, if I may. It's about making sure that you have the right people, and that might be one person, it might be 20, it might be hundreds, I don't know, but you have the right blend of skills that can execute at the strategy level and are happy to work in the weeds. We're all different. Some of us are happy in a different place. And if we have the wrong people in the wrong place, it's not going to come out well. Yeah. The stuff that
Yeah.
is in the
Yeah.
weeds is really interesting to lots of people because it's super important. Some people love detail. So it really is about having the right people there. I think from a customer perspective, they have to appreciate that when they take on an engagement like this, it's probably what 60, 70% of actually what would appear tedious to them. Back end things where they won't perceive any value, but that's actually where the value is. Okay.
Yes.
That's where the real
Yeah.
value is, because if it was simple and it was
Mm.
front end, they could do it themselves. So what we always recommend is, particularly, you'd be working in an agile way. For every sprint, the goal should read with something that our users can do at the end of this 2-week sprint. Okay. So at the end of this sprint, our users will be able to pay their electricity bill. Okay. Now that could be something really small, but we know that there's that much back end stuff to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And if we just do that much back end stuff and show our customer what, all back end stuff, it's not very exciting, particularly when our
Yeah.
stakeholders say, do something more modern, right? They're not,
Yeah.
there's no tangible value to them, there's nothing visible. If we front load that, if we slice our work appropriately, it means that every sprint we can be delivering something the user can do and all the associated back end stuff. It's not easy. It's not easy. I'm not pretending it is. But that's the only way you can keep people with you on that journey. And I think for the people who are doing this stuff in the weeds, we've got to always respect that that's the stuff that enables us to pay that electricity bill or do whatever our user wants to
Yeah.
do. Yeah. And we have to
Yeah.
call that out because that has to be recognized. In order to do this, these people have done this. So that's how I
Yeah.
usually balance it.
Amazing. And I think just kind of moving towards our kind of like final talking point this morning, which is and this is something that I like to ask everyone, which is there's a there's a new generation of leaders coming in to the industry
Right.
now, and they are seeking to navigate an ever more complex world. Um, and there's a really interesting thing that Scott Brinker does, which is just to bring together all of the logos of all the different marketing technologies that there are. He's been doing this now over quite a few periods of years, and every year this logo map becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and more overwhelming and more
Yeah.
vast.
Yeah.
Each year, and just to suggest that there's just a ton of stuff out there. What advice can we give to the next generation of leaders coming in, and how can we help them be successful?
For me, it always comes down to focus on your business goals, but think small, grow out. So don't start with a
Mm,
plethora of tools. Start with
mm,
one. Sort your
yeah,
platform.
yeah.
Sort your platform.
Be really
Be
clear,
really clear.
about your core. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Get super clear on that. Keep it as simple as possible. And you only add things when you really need to. Don't be tempted to go for the
mm,
latest, shiniest, all singing, all dancing. They're often not all singing, all dancing. They're often the people who've got, or the organizations who've got the
yeah,
most marketing spend, right? So be
yeah, yeah.
careful. Solidify your platform. Get your team to be really capable with that platform. That's the other thing I would say, because often they're not. They scratch the surface
Mm,
of a tool set and then a shiny thing comes along. But that shiny thing is doing what the platform apps could already do, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
really, really hone in on your core stack before you start getting carried away with everything else. And if something isn't going to deliver business value, don't even think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Alison, it's been such a pleasure talking with you this morning. Thank you
Likewise,
so
thank you.
much. Is there anything that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
A lot of people are asking me at the moment, is Agile failing? I don't know if you're
Oh,
hearing that.
okay. Well, that is a whole other podcast, that right there. And I would love to invite you back to have a
I'd
just
love to.
briefly. Is Agile failing?
I don't believe Agile is failing. I think how people apply Agile is failing. Therefore, I think people are failing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is a fantastic topic. We will get into that. I would love to have you back on the
Yeah, I'd
cast,
love to.
and we could talk about that in some more detail, and and take it from there. So, Alison, thank you so much. It's been lovely having you,
My pleasure.
and wish you the very best.
Thank you.